Hello everybody, this is Mr. US History. Welcome back to a brand new video, and we're going to go back again on the new campaign trail. And I'm going to actually try out a mod which was suggested to me by a viewer who commented on my last video. And the mod is the 1964 Midnight mod, which is basically the 1964 election, which is Barry Goldwater versus Lyndon Johnson. I don't necessarily see here what the difference is between this mod and the regular 1964 mod. I've done the regular 1964 mod before, and let me just tell you that it is very hard to win as. So let's see what's different in this mod. I have not tried it out yet. So I'm going to play as Goldwater because he didn't win in the actual election, so ever since the release of The Conscience of a Conservative, he is a household name and is known for being a staunch conservative and constitutional constructionist. In the Republican primary, he faced off against familiar faces like Rockefeller, Lodge, Scranton, and Smith. But after winning the nomination, he now stands as the conservative face of the Republican Party. But not everyone's happy about it. That happened in our actual scenario, where Goldwater won the nomination, but he faced a lot of opposition from moderate and center-right Republicans who actually endorsed Lyndon Johnson because they believed Goldwater was too extreme. Going into the general election campaign, Goldwater is more than 30 points behind his opponent in the polls. If he wants to have hope in hell of winning this thing, he needs to shake things up fast, unless he doomed his beloved conservative ideology to the dark abyss of unelectability. So I need to be able to still give red meat out to the conservative base, but at the same time make sure that moderates don't view me as too much of an extremist. So William Miller is the running mate. He's similar to that regard, but his New York location, Catholic family, faith could help balance a ticket. Some in your campaign feel his selection would send a message to moderates that you have no interest in appealing to them, while others relish in the thought of the sheer turnout he can bring among the base. But would that be enough to hand you the presidency? Probably not. So he has the same unpopular opinions on Social Security, among other government programs, and is relatively unknown on a national level. But hey, he drives Johnson nuts. That's not enough. What is? Well, Lyndon Johnson actually wasn't even aware of William Miller's existence, so I don't know why Goldwater thought that by picking Miller it would drive Johnson nuts. But anyway, are there any other options who are more liberal? There aren't. See, that's one of the things I've never understood about New Campaign Trail, which is for the 1964 mod, why don't they have any other options besides Miller for Goldwater? There should be, like, a more moderate or liberal option for Goldwater to pick. But anyway, yeah, we're going to try normal mode. We'll see how it goes. So, yeah, the polling does not look good for me. This is actually more hard than the actual 1964 mod, because the regular mod, you actually start off by winning most of the Midwest, Great Plains, and the Rocky Mountain states. And and in this state, you actually start out behind in Arizona. And I'm barely ahead in Georgia. So, this is going to be tough. With Eisenhower disavowing the Stop Goldwater movement, it's fallen apart, much to the chagrin of liberals like Rockefeller and Lodge. After winning the Republican nomination on the first ballot, you're introduced to the convention by Richard Nixon, and it's finally time for your long-awaited great acceptance speech. What will be its core message? Let's see. I accept your nomination with a deep sense of humility. Let's see here. Alright, this seems okay. My fellow Republicans, the good Lord raised this mighty republic to be home for the brave and to flourish as the land of the free, not to stagnate in the swampland of... Nope, I'm not going to do that. Those in this great nation who seek absolute power, even though they seek it in what they regard as good, are simply demanding the unregulated right to enforce their own, often twisted version of heaven on earth. Let me remind you, they're the ones who create the most hellish... Yeah, I'm not going to try to be too conservative with my message. I'll just go with this one. I'll try to be moderate. Your supporters immediately break into applause, but not with as much enthusiasm as you'd have hoped. However, Rockefeller seems to have leaned in, intrigued by your pivot. Mending mending fences with the liberal wing of the party will be critical this fall, and you're well on your way to doing so. Alright. Did this change anything? No, it did not. I'm still down in my own home state, and New York, I'm losing by close to 50 points. Alright. In a somewhat interesting turn of events, you selected Republican National Committee Chairman William Edward Miller as your vice presidential running mate. He is a moderately inoffensive choice, as seen by his unanimous nomination, but he also has a virtually non-existent national profile. His acceptance speech, which he gave shortly before your own, was short and relatively well received. Still, some are wary of his choice, and many more do not even know who he is. Do you have anything to say about your choice for vice president? Yeah, I don't know why Goldwater picked Miller as his vice president. I mean, he could have picked a more moderate person and tried to appease the moderate wing of the party, but he picked another conservative just like himself. Like, even then, in the new campaign trail, you should have I wish there was an option to pick another running mate, but it is what it is. Let's see. Okay. I don't want to too much emphasize his conservative credentials because I don't want this ticket to be seen as too far to the right. So I can either go with 1 or 4. Uh, this would like lean into the few actual qualifications that he has, but I'm gonna actually go with this because it may unify the Republican Party. Many in the party are impressed by um, Miller's record as a political strategist. However, such an emphasis does very little to help win over those outside your party, like independents and moderate Democrats, groups you'll need on your side if you want to actually win the election. Well, before I get to the independents and moderate Democrats, I want to first unify the party and make sure that every Republican votes for me, which is extremely unlikely. So let's go to Florida. By some more than others, your acceptance speech was generally well received. However, many have taken note of one specific phrase. Here it comes, in which you mentioned that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice, that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue. Liberal and moderate Republicans have taken this as both a direct insult as well as a blanket approval of right-wing extremism. Do you intend on clarifying your controversial statement? I'm not going to go with number 4. Actually, 1, 2, or 3, either one of these options is honestly decent. I'll just try to go with this. Appreciative of your surprisingly kind and conciliatory letter, Rockefeller agrees to not turn your words into an intra-party issue. Johnson, on the other hand, has no such restrictions. The upcoming campaign Democrats are sure to accuse you of being a far-right radical. Well, they were going to do that no matter how I would have responded. So I see this as a net positive. Okay, Arizona. I'm stuck at 47. Let's address the elephant in the room. Earlier this year, you famously voted against the Johnson Civil Rights Act, yourself saying you can't legislate morality. Even although you expected it to be a minor issue, this has devastated your numbers among minority voters, liberals, and even moderates. Although you do enjoy unusually high support in the South for a Republican. Simply put, why did you vote against this act? I'm not going to say the second option because, well, I don't want to lose Georgia. Let's just say that. And then, let's see. Number 2, I think, goes too far into the whole states' rights thing. So, 2 or 1, I don't think are good. As for, or no, 3 or 1 aren't really good. Let's go with 2, actually. I think this is a decent one. This is an interesting pivot, but it goes over fairly well. Moderates are tentatively pleased by your pledge to uphold the act, while your more conservative supporters, think you're just saving face and are still as supportive of you as ever. Time will show how serious you truly are. Alright, that's great. But I'm still down in Arizona. Let's visit Arizona. I don't actually, Arizona has only 5 electoral votes. I think Florida would be better. 1 week ago, on the last day of the Republican National Convention, a 15-year-old African-American man named James Powell was murdered by an off-duty police officer in New York City. What followed was 6 straight days of violent rioting. By the end, one was dead, and almost 200 were injured, with over $1 million in property damage. The aftermath of the chaos, you've enjoyed a bit of a rise in the polls, seeing as you were name dropped by one of the protesters. Many are curious about your opinion on the Harlem riots, as well as racial violence in general. Number 2, I'm not going to say. Let's see. You know what? I'll go with this one. Some accuse you of doing the very thing you're saying you're not, but to most you seem surprisingly caring and sensitive. Just pray your supporters, or your opponents for that matter, don't try anything lest you be called upon to fulfill your pledge. Alright, hopefully that doesn't screw me later in the campaign, but I'm coming really close in Florida and Arizona now. Despite the time that has passed since JFK's tragic death still hangs in the air for many, if not all, Americans, his fateful visit to Dallas was in preparation for his re-election campaign after all. Until then, it was widely assumed that you'd be running against him this year. Do you have any words to say about his passing? I'm gonna say this. Well, let's see what else. I'm not gonna say number 2. I'm not gonna do number 3 either, or number 4. I'll just go with number 1. For a man whose words tend to embellish his statements, this comes across as very honest and heartfelt, and actually has turned a few heads towards you. Alright, that's great. But it's not helping me with my polling numbers. Let's actually try Indiana. Often considered the third rail of politics, the Social Security program, here it comes, is overwhelmingly popular with almost everyone other than staunch fiscal conservatives like yourself. Meanwhile, you've recently expressed your desire to turn it into a voluntary system, a change which William Miller has said would unquestionably destroy the system. Miller has been attempting to cover for you, saying that your position has been misunderstood. Could you clarify your opinion on the program? Let's see. I'm just gonna try going with this. Surprisingly honest and level-headed response. Sure, this stance in and of itself is generally unpopular, but it helps to moderate your controversial position without coming off a flip-flop. To your fortune, the issue begins to fade away as the press moves on to other things. Alright, this is great. Let's see here. My numbers still haven't changed yet, though. Last week, the USS Maddox and the USS Turner Joy were attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin by Vietnamese forces. 2 days later, 2 North Vietnamese torpedo boats were allegedly sunk in a second attack, though there is no wreckage. The day of the incident, President Johnson requested permission from Congress to react with military force, which received unanimous support, barring 2 senators, Morse of Oregon and Gruning of Alaska. Seeing as you would inherit the conflict if elected, can you clarify your position on the Vietnamese conflict? Say, I don't like this option because I don't want to basically have the same position as Johnson, but at the same time, the rest of them just seem way too aggressive. I'm gonna try this one. Agreeing with Johnson, who are you and what have you done with Barry Goldwater? Your statement comes as a shock to your supporters, but is generally popular. People are still rallying around Johnson, but you've helped to make people see you in a more bipartisan light. Okay, that could have been worse. So the Daisy ad then would never have gotten out because I'm not being militaristic when it comes to Vietnam. So that would at least help me. Let's try campaigning in Oklahoma. Seeing as you're the Republican Party nominee, former President Eisenhower, as expected, has been, as expected, supportive of your campaign. However, so far such support has been extremely minimal, and Eisenhower's only been giving you the most bare minimum of endorsements following your nomination. This is almost certainly due to your outspoken criticism of his administration, yourself calling it a dime store New Deal. Eisenhower remains an extremely popular figure, and many think you can benefit from mending fences with the former president. Do you have any intention of doing so? Let's go with this one. Eisenhower's a little annoyed that you keep badgering him about this, but he listens to your points, nodding along. By the end, he agrees to give you whatever you need, whether it be ads, statements, or support, or anything in between. And the next day, he delivers a full endorsement. All right, that's great. That should help me in the Midwest and the farm states, but didn't really change anything. More than a month after your own, the DNC in New Jersey has just wrapped up with Johnson confirmed as their nominee, though that was never in doubt. However, there are still some interesting points to go over, the most obvious of which is Johnson's selection of Humphrey as his running mate. There's also an interesting controversy with a group known as the MFDP challenging the legitimacy of their state's official delegation. Do you have any comments to make on your opponents in the aftermath of their spectacle? Number one, it's kind of hypocrisy because of the fact that the Republican primary was actually much more contentious than the Democratic one. So, let's see. Um, you know what? I'm going to go with this one. This is a scathing attack on Johnson's record, and it does help to highlight his unfortunate history regarding civil rights. Still, with Johnson's own Civil Rights Act fresh off the Congress floor, he is a faker. He is sure committed to the act. Okay, let's go to Florida. Although the president currently enjoys high approval ratings, one scandal he has been unable to effectively dodge is his close association or relationship with Robert Baker, a Democratic Party operative who was discovered to have participated in numerous activities, including tax fraud, bribery, and corruption. Barker and Johnson were close friends dating back to when the president was first elected senator. A slightly more minor scandal is Johnson's relationship with Bill Sol Estes, a Texan businessman who has been convicted of fraud. How do you plan on taking advantage of these unfortunate scandals? Let's see. I want to make something completely clear. Baker was Johnson's man. Look at the record. The two were best of friends until things went south. We need a complete investigation into the two relationships. Let me tell you, we won't get it with the big man in charge. Okay. I don't think I want to go with number two. I don't want to make this too much of an issue. And let's see. If you take a closer look, you'll find that the investigation against Johnson and his ties to these figures was ramping up, and then Kennedy was killed and it completely stopped. Now, I don't want to insinuate something, but the convenience of it all makes you think, okay, I don't want to go with that one either. So, one or three are okay. I'll go with three. These scandals are a serious weak point for Johnson, perhaps his only true Achilles heel. Their campaign ads solely begin to shift focus towards scandals with the names Bobby Baker and Billy Sol Estes getting drilled into the minds of each and every American. Alright. Now I'm up in Florida, but I'm still down in Arizona. In the aftermath of the Bobby Baker scandal, Democrats have begun attacking you over your own connections to various figures, particularly on the fact that you've been endorsed by both the John Birch Society, a far-right anti-communist association, as well as the Ku Klux Klan. Your opposition has gone as far as to release a full-length ad in which a man says while he voted for Nixon and Eisenhower, he can't bring himself to vote for you. How do you intend on changing the narrative when it comes to these endorsements? Number two, I should not do. Number three, I shouldn't do either because I'll just go with number one. This is likely the best you can do here. Your hardcore supporters, like people in the John Birch Society, read in the papers about your campaign disavowing extremist ideas and dangerous theories, and they don't think much of it. Meanwhile, moderate voters nod along. Alright. How did I lose my lead in Florida? There's no way I lost my lead by disavowing the Ku Klux Klan. Okay. Let's go to Arizona. On the January 8th of this year, at his State of the Union address, Johnson has declared what he called an unconditional war on poverty. Since then, the president has supported a staunchly liberal economic program which has been dubbed his Great Society. Since then, he has passed the Economic Opportunity and the VISTA Act, which both serve to provide government jobs to low-income Americans. While decried by conservatives, Johnson's platform is widely popular. What are your thoughts on it? Sorry there. So, what do they think about economics? Florida's moderate. Arizona says overturn. Uh, strongly against, over. So most of these states which I'm close to winning, they're either against it, they're moderate, or they overturn it. So let's just say against. I'm not going to privatize it. That goes too far. That can even lose me votes in Georgia, I think. How about... this one? This is an interesting attack, and it certainly plays better than attacking these programs directly. Framing them as a scheme to grab votes would hurt you, but on the balance, it does nothing to turn new heads. So there should be no change, basically. Oh, I actually gained ground in Arizona, and I flipped Florida. This is great. So now I'm at 66. I'm gaining momentum, but obviously not enough to win. Uh-oh, 3 days ago at a campaign stop in Indiana, you spoke to a crowd about the American troop buildup in Vietnam, chance of war. Things were going well until, for God knows why, you had to shut off that brain of yours and start talking about how there's a craven fear of death in America, and with it, an irrational phobia of nuclear weapons. You know, we ought to lob one of those in the men rooms of the Kremlin. All the crowd could do was gasp. Care to explain yourself? Honestly, why would Goldwater say that? Like, that's the stupidest thing you could possibly say. But anyway, like, there should have been an option, at least in the game, for me to not say that. Like, many of the things which are going on are out of my control. But anyway, uh, you know what? I'll just say it was a joke and move on. Try to play it off as a joke, but your speech speaks for itself. Johnson has more ammo than he knows what to do with. He releases a new ad, a vivid ad in which a little girl is in a field picking up the petals of a flower. I should count down, and then, well, you know the rest, don't you? Alright, it is what it is. And I lost my lead in both Florida and Arizona. So let's go to Florida again and see if I can 2 years ago, on June 25th, 1962, the Supreme Court gave an extremely controversial decision on the case of Angel v. Vitale. Led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Stephen Angel, a decision which effectively outlawed in-school prayer. Conservatives were, and still are, foaming at the mouth over the decision, while liberals and those supportive of staunch separation of church and state were overjoyed. In the aftermath of the nuclear weapons debacle, your advisors think this is a good issue to focus on and regain support. Would you appoint justices who would overturn the decision? What do these guys think about, like, social issues? It doesn't say anything there, but let's see. Okay, this is a bit too sacrilegious, I think, so let's outlaw that. Number 2 is not a popular decision. It's not that popular, so we'll get rid of 2 and 4. Let's go with this one. You've taken a staunchly conservative position on the issue, but nevertheless, it's popular. The court's decision came as a shock to most Americans. Many would be happy to see it overturned. Alright, this is great. So I now have a lead in Florida and a lead in Arizona. So I'm at 66. Following the assassination of President Kennedy, Johnson established via executive order a commission to investigate the tragedy. Headed by figures like Justice Warren, Congressman Ford, and Senator Russell, the aptly dubbed Warren Commission has finally released its findings in an almost 900-page report. Americans have hyperfixated on a single shocking line. This report cannot rule out the possibility that Mr. Oswald had help from within an executive administration. Oh, so that's what the change is in this scenario. They're making it so that the Warren Commission's findings are different and that Oswald actually had, and they're actually like telling the truth this time that Oswald had help from an executive administration. So the Warren Commission in this case has different findings. They don't cover it up like they normally did. And I say cover it up because I am 85% sure or 75% sure the JFK assassination was more than just Oswald and the single shooter, because if you just look at that video, anyway, I don't really want to get too much into this, but I'm pretty certain that the actual JFK assassination was not just Oswald. But anyway, so that's what the difference here in the scenario is, which is that they make it so that actually an executive agency may have helped Oswald, and they say that in the report. So while vague, countless Americans have inferred it to mean that President Johnson, in one way or another, was involved in Kennedy's death. Now, while I do believe the JFK assassination, the Warren Commission was not correct in its findings, or it was covering it up, I don't think that Johnson was actually responsible for Kennedy's assassination. Like, he definitely covered it up, but I don't think he was responsible, because if you look at it, you had John Connally also in a car right behind Kennedy. So, and Connally was friends with Johnson, so why would Johnson want to risk Connally's life? And Connally was actually injured in the shot, and while Johnson didn't like Kennedy, I don't think he would have gone as far as killing him. But let's see what this says. At a campaign stop in Ohio, a dozen reporters rush up to you, cameras flashing as they ask your opinion on the news. One reporter finally relays you the story, and you're left stunned. After a moment, what do you say? I'm not going with number two. Let's go with this one. With the shedding of a single tear, millions of Americans begin to see you in a new light. The nation is pretty evenly split in regards with believing Johnson's innocence or guilt, but one thing for sure is certain, the course of American history has been changed forever. Alright, so that's the difference here, and I just got a whole lot of support. I'm at 160 now. I went from 60 to 160 because of just one thing changing. Alright, let's go to Ohio. Earlier today, President Johnson held a press conference in which he gave a blanket denial of any involvement in the Kennedy assassination. At one point, he got heated, blurting out, "I ordered the damn report. Do you think I would have done that if I had killed him?" The conference ends soon. Despite his denial, multiple members of his administration, including Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach, have resigned from their positions, citing concerns over integrity. Furthermore, there have been talks for Johnson to resign and for Senator Humphrey to head the new ticket. Any comment? I'll go with number four. It puts me in a more decisive thing. A new poster showing both the Lincoln Johnson and Kennedy Johnson tickets begins circulating. The poster is captioned "Assassinated and Impeached." You find the common denominator. It gains traction, but with the Democrats' hold on Congress, impeachment is unlikely. Alright, but it is helping me. I've gained Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina. I'm up barely in those states, but it's still good enough. Let's go to Pennsylvania next. Recently, President Johnson has been claiming that Robert Kennedy, younger brother to the late president and candidate for the Democratic nomination, was responsible for the results of the Warren Commission, alleging he was a goddamn attorney general. By God, he hated me. What else do you need? Yesterday, Kennedy was asked by reporters if he believed Johnson's innocence or guilt, to which he responded that he wasn't particularly supportive of the president, that Johnson's claims were completely baseless. Do you have any plans to exploit this feud? Go with this one. True to your word, you give one of the most impassioned speeches of your career, demolishing Johnson for his lack of tact and respect. While this could have backfired, many were moved by your words, with even Ted Kennedy commending you for defending the legacy of his brother. All right, that really helped me. Let's go to Pennsylvania. President Johnson, who previously ignored your calls for a debate, has finally agreed to inciting his desire to clear his name to the American people. Of course, you were quick to accept, with yourself and the president now on the same stage, standing behind the two podiums just as Jack Kennedy and Dick Nixon did 4 years ago. As the debate's moderator, Walter Cronkite, finishes introductions, he asks for your opening statements. With the eyes of millions on you, what do you say? You know what? Let's hit hard at Johnson for scandals. Johnson takes your bait and it's to the races. The debate quickly devolves into mudslinging with Cronkite struggling to keep up. Nevertheless, Johnson's commanding figure and bombastic voice has led many to consider him the victor of the night. Alright, did that help me in any way? Well, it kept things the same, so it didn't necessarily hurt me. In the aftermath of all this, your numbers have skyrocketed, or more accurately, Johnson's have plummeted. This race, which was once considered a sewn-up landslide, has become incredibly close, with a Goldwater victory surprisingly feasible. As such, donations to your campaign have spiked, and your once dwindling coffers are now filled to the brim. Your advisors have suggested using the money on a blitz of new ads, what will be their focus? Let's go with this one. There's some talk of you politicizing the Warren Report, which you clearly are, but not many care, with the majority of the public being, as expected, against the president. Alright. Let's go to Ohio. Last week, news broke out that Walter Jenkins, a top political aide of President Johnson, has been arrested, along with another man under charges of disorderly conduct in the YMCA bathroom. Furthermore, it's come into the light that Jenkins has previously been arrested on the same charge 5 years ago in the very same bathroom. Yesterday, Jenkins submitted his resignation, which the president reluctantly accepted. Your advisors think of turning the affair into a major issue could propel your candidacy to victory now that you actually have a chance of achieving one. Do you wish to do so? The scandal has cast an unfortunate light on the Johnson administration, but it's generally considered secondary to the Warren fiasco. But you made a smart move in attacking him in a more general fashion about moral rot as a whole. All right. Still stuck. In an unexpected turn of events, the leader of the Soviet Union, Khrushchev, has resigned, citing ill health, and while Leonid Brezhnev has been voted in as his replacement on the same day, on the surface, this is a peaceful transition of power, but to most, it's an obvious coup by Brezhnev and his supporters. Considering the prevalence of Khrushchev in a number of your ads, this has slightly damaged the campaign, which could make the difference with how close things have gotten. In light of this news, do you intend on making any alterations to your campaign? Let's do this one. Sino-Soviet relations are indeed repairing following the coup, and hammering on that makes you seem more like a prophet when 2 days later Red China successfully tests their nuclear weapons. On the end of the things, seems like you have made gains in the polls. Alright, great. But I haven't won any new states. Let's look at the popular vote estimate. I'm down by only 8 points. Okay, let's go to Ohio again. Over the past few years, California actor Ronald Reagan has begun his journey into the political scene as a conservative Republican. As such, he has been a committed supporter of you, and alongside characters such as John Wayne, he has starred in multiple ads for you over the course of the campaign. Recently, he has been going around the country giving speeches to various audiences. Your campaign has purchased the 30-minute spot on NBC to air the speech on national television, but some of your advisors think it could backfire. After watching the speech with him, what do you plan on to do? Let's do this one. Your advisors are anxious as you call Reagan, asking for his thoughts. He expresses that while he's grateful for the opportunity, he doesn't want to hurt your campaign in the final days. Instead, your campaign airs an ad focusing on your time in the Air Force. Alright, I'm winning Ohio now. That's great. So I'm at 196. Perhaps the most tumultuous and chaotic election season in American history is finally nearing its fateful end. Emotions are at an all-time high, and millions of devastated, heartbroken, and otherwise disillusioned Americans simply want a strong voice to guide them back to a sense of normalcy. As such, your campaign has organized an opportunity for you to give a final speech, one which will be heard throughout the nation. What will be its general message? Let's do this one. Johnson's numbers buckle underneath the weight of the striking speech. Every day, more and more Americans begin to believe the accusations against him. Not all of them are switching to you, however, with pundits predicting record low turnout. Let's hope it's enough. Oh boy, I really got a lot of votes there. Let's go to Pennsylvania. Well, here we are. After possibly the most shocking and heartbreaking campaign in American history, we're just a few days short of Election Day. Things are looking closer than ever, and a statement which seemed unconscionable just a month ago. With every little bit counting, where do you want to spend your final campaign stop, Senator Goldwater? Yeah, let's go here. You have no path to victory without these states. That's the bottom line. You make a number of appearances with Governor Scranton and Jim Rhodes, and with yourself promising him a place in your possible administration, even Charles Percy agrees to campaign with you. Alright, let's see it. I want to see the results come in like this. The income tax created more criminals than any other single act of government. Alright. I'm winning so far. Let's see how it's going so far. Kentucky, that went by 14. West Virginia by 20. Indiana went by 13. Alright, how much points did Massachusetts go? 20 and 17. Okay. Texas, of course, Johnson won Texas. Illinois, I wasn't expecting to win. Right. Okay, I'm at 167. I won Ohio. That's pretty good. Utah. Oklahoma came in for me. So did Montana. Washington went in for Johnson. Ah, I lost. But let's just see what else comes in. Well, yeah, Missouri was a deciding state. Hey, I won Iowa, but I lost Alaska. But anyway, 208. I surpassed 200 electoral votes. Wisconsin. I lost Pennsylvania, but I won New Mexico. Alright. Johnson was always heavily favored to win, even with a calamity like the Warren Report. All it did was elevate you from Alf Landon status to Thomas Dewey status. Johnson has just barely scraped a supermajority in the House. The Senate just shy of one, and it's well set for the next 2 years at least. That night, you speak with both Nixon and Reagan, discussing the ups and downs of your campaign, the opportunities lost and the victories won. To your bemusement, both seem to voice interest in taking up the mantle of Republican leadership in the future. At the very least, if one is elected president, perhaps you can secure a cabinet position. For the time being, it seems you'll be staying in Phoenix. After 2 terms in the Senate, you're unemployed, and there's little left to do besides the odd speaking event and watching as LBJ carves this nation into his vision of a great society. Alright, so I'd say I did pretty well, honestly. If I had just won Missouri, I think Oregon, that's 18, perhaps Pennsylvania also, then I would have won the presidency, just if I'd won those 3 states. Pennsylvania, Johnson, that was incredibly down to the wire. He won by, like, let's see what the results in Pennsylvania were. He won by, like 0.06 percentage points, which is, like, just about like 30,000 votes in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, Pennsylvania really went down to the wire. Same with Oregon, in fact, and Missouri. So if I just won those 3 states, I would have won the presidency. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like this video down below and subscribe to the channel.